What are you up to this morning?
Um, just went to the gym, uh, fed horses, and then uh, rode a couple horses, and now I'm inside.
Are you doing a pretty steady gym routine every day?
Yeah, yeah. I go 4 or 5 days a week, and Wednesdays I'm like a maybe if I'll go. Um, because Wednesday evenings is when I go run with my friends. So sometimes I've been kind of bit in the ass by uh, going to the gym in the morning, then riding all day, and then going to run in the evening. And then it's like you can't do anything.
And are you still following the knees over toes stuff pretty closely?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's all the exercises I do.
Man,
Um, I've changed the regimen some, just kind of depending on what I've got going on and my level of activity. I think the biggest thing was I had to kind of dial some stuff down because when you're at an office job, you can kind of hit the gym a little harder because then physically you're not doing as much the rest of the day. That's kind of like your exercise for the whole day. But when you're riding horses all day and doing like manual labor, you got to be careful, especially if you're starting out with the gym in the morning, that you don't hit 3 o'clock and hit an absolute wall because you were going too hard that morning. At least that's my take on it. Maybe I'm just being a wimp, but
like if you're running late one day, do you have an exercise that you make sure you do, like a core basic like routine
yeah,
you're going to run through?
yeah, because I'm only at the gym maybe 30, 40 minutes most days. Like I'm not in there going crazy. And I was doing longer sessions before, and I was just like, this is taking too much time and it's taking too much energy out of me, and it's like making the rest of my day suffer. Um, but for lower body days, I pretty much always start with the sled forward and back. So pulling the sled with the weight belt and then pushing the sled. And then um, as many days as I can fit in, there's two exercises. There's the ATG split squat, which you've probably seen. I think we've talked about it a little bit. Um, so I always do that one, and then I always do the uh, what's called a Jefferson curl, which is kind of like a weighted version of going down to touch your toes and coming back up. And I like barely use any weight at all, maybe like 5-10 pounds. But that's because I know me personally, like I pick those exercises because me personally, like relatively speaking, my knees and ankles are pretty good. My weak parts are definitely my hips and my lower back, which I'd say people who ride as much as us, probably most people that ride a bunch, it's the hips and the lower back. So I do those exercises pretty much as I can like stand it, because when I do those, my back and my hips feel a lot better because those are um, they open up your hips, and then the Jefferson curl opens up your whole posterior chain, so it's stretching out your upper calves, hamstrings, back, everything like that. And I I even have a like a slant. I guess if there was one thing I did every day for me specifically, I do the Jefferson curls. Like I try to do them every day because I even have like a little slant board, the thing that's just like it's like that, and then you can put your toes kind of up, and so like instead of touching your toes on flat ground, your toes are higher than your heels when you go to touch your toes, and you get like a deeper stretch. Um, I try to do that every day, but that's like specific to me because I know, because of my height and because of the sports I played when I was younger, I can be really prone to back problems. And so I'm just trying to be really proactive to that, since I'm riding horses, which is something that can really expose you to having back problems.
So like here's something. Do you, because I've been thinking about it lately, like this, like working out every day like that. Do you think that first and foremost it's beneficial to your body, or first and foremost it's a discipline that you do every day? And I ask that because lately I've had less and less time. I've really been trying to fit in like a little workout every morning, sometimes around noon, sometimes in the evening, trying to fit it in every day. But I'm being realistic with myself, and it's not doing a whole lot for my body. It's not long enough, or it's not even enough stuff to make much of an impact on my physical fitness compared to just going about my everyday life. And I think right now, like I'm trying to do it every day still, so it's more of a discipline for me.
Yeah. I guess my two thoughts would be one, I mean, you don't know really the positive effect you could have because have you ever really gone 2 weeks without, like, I know I have. For whatever reason, you get like completely out of rhythm, even though you think you're not doing much as far as exercising, and then you don't exercise for like 2 weeks or more. And then, at least me personally, then I really start to, I'm like, man, I don't have like the same pep in my step, you know? So
Yeah, I haven't gone
even
that
though,
long.
yeah. So even though it might feel really small, it like exercise is one of those things that like really compounds. It's not even a week by week thing. It's like months and years. So just you doing those little things now might help you 30 years from now if you are consistent about them, you know. Um, because most of the stuff I do, I mean, I was thinking about it today when I left. I was like, I don't think I picked up a weight more than like, well, like I picked up a 45-pound plate, but that was literally to like do my split squat on. So the actual weights I was doing, like I wasn't lifting really heavy or doing anything that was gonna like seriously change my physique, but I was doing a lot of stuff to really kind of focus on my weak spots. Um, and like day to day, if I skipped a day, maybe I wouldn't notice it, but you notice it if you don't do it for a month. So that would be my first thought, is give yourself some credit there. And then the other thing, which I don't think it was the point you were getting at, but you know, if you don't think it's having a very big impact and you want it to have more impact, like change up what you're doing. Like, you know, maybe dig in a little and find something that is like a weak spot for you and then focus on that more, and it'll probably be a lot harder, you know.
Yeah.
If you only have a certain amount of time, like you can, I mean, you can take 10 minutes and make someone exercise for 10 minutes and they'll be cooked, man. You can wear someone out in 10 minutes. That's not the issue.
Yeah. Well, I guess that was my question. What's your mindset going into a workout? Do you think about it, and like do you think I got to do this because I'm going to get weak and I'm trying to hit this goal? Or do you think of it like, all right, it's time to work out. It's that thing I do every day. Got to do it so I can
Um,
check it off my list and I'll have conquered the workout again.
no, it's not. It honestly, like when I actually make it to the gym, and when I say that, like I've been pretty consistent about going. When I mean I like physically walk in, it's it's honestly like one of the best parts of my day. Like I don't know how you feel, but it's kind of like when you get to sit on the first horse of the day and you're like, okay, I've got everything fed and I've got something tacked up and I've done enough groundwork that now I can get on this horse. And now I get to do the part that I really like to do, which is ride the horse.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how you feel. Like I'm a super strong believer that groundwork is incredibly important and I'm always trying to get better with my groundwork. But I don't like pursue this because it's like, oh boy, I get to do groundwork the rest of my life. Like I want to get on and ride. And so for me, the hardest part of going to the gym is doing like the 10-minute drive to the gym like leaving the house, especially when it's like cold in the morning, doing the 10-minute drive to the gym. But as soon as I go in there and scan my card, I'm like, okay, now I'm in it. Like I like doing this. And kind of like my thought, I don't think about it like, oh, I've got to do this every day. Like when I'm there, my thought literally like almost every day is I've known so many people in the horse industry that are like crippled and beat up when they're old. And I don't know if I can prevent that, but I'm going to do everything in my power to prevent that for me. And then I also think about that story that, we've like heard a bunch of people talk about how Bill Dorrance roped into his 90s. And I also like when I go to the gym, I think about like, that's me. I want to be like riding in my 90s. But if I'm going to ride my 90s, the best chance I have is to be paying the dividends now, controlling the things I can control in my 20s. So.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I don't. I think I start to enjoy it maybe 3/4 of the way through, but I am more addicted
Yeah.
to the feeling of finishing a workout. Like I'm glad to be done. Because I
Now
don't
that's how I
approach it like
feel
that at
about
all.
running.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Like I'm really bad about that, especially when I run with my friends. Like if we have a set loop we're doing, they're like, all right, now we're just gonna do this run and then we'll be done. And da da da. Like if I know the distance I have to go for a run, I'm really bad about just like trying to get it done as quick as I can, even if that's not necessarily the purpose of the run is to run as hard as you can for that entire distance.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm
No,
like
that's
that with
not how
running, but
yeah, that's
yeah,
definitely how I work out. It sounds like how you run.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
like
I
I'm,
like weightlifting. I
because like
like
I
it a
wake
lot.
up every morning with like a little voice that tells me I don't need to work out and it'll be all right.
Hmm.
Just miss today. But then missing today turns into missing tomorrow, and then missing the next day. So I feel like I have to, like with a horse, every time you get it out, and if you don't define things early on, like if you get a new horse in and they've been pretty spoiled, and if you don't start to define some things early on, then it's going to plague your time with that horse. And then sometime like 3 or 4 weeks into it, one day you have like a big come to Jesus meeting because you didn't take care of it on the first day. Like that's how I feel like every one of my days start. Where like I have to have a come to Jesus meeting with myself. And because if I don't, the whole day drags. And then I end up taking care of it way too late into the day. And that's what working out is for me. Is like my come to Jesus, like first thing in the morning, like, hey, I don't care if you don't like that. You're gonna take a cold shower and you're gonna work out a little bit. And then I feel great after that.
Yeah. Um,
But
you
yeah,
you
and
want to
running
hear
would be
a
even
funny
worse.
story from
Yeah.
this week? That's kind of about the gym. So, like I said, the one like every Wednesday we do what's called like a pub run, right? So you go into town and you do a run, and then you like get a beer with your friends or whatever. And um, there's I've got a couple friends I do that with like pretty consistently, at least the running part. A lot of times, if I'm too busy or like we're recording a podcast, I don't go to the bar after. But so like I said, I've kind of been caught where if I go to the gym that morning and then ride all day and then run in the evening, like that's a full day. That is a lot of work. Um, and so I was like, man, but you know what? If I don't go to the gym, it's funny. I almost feel like I get like a later start because kind of going back to what you're saying, I didn't have that like regiment on that day, and so I get a later start, and then I still go run, so I still exercise, but it's like I don't kind of like pop out of bed in the morning the same way. So I was like, oh, what should I do? Um, and I've been like listening to some podcasts and reading all this stuff about um, everyone talks about the like sauna health benefits and stuff. And there's a sauna in the locker room at my gym, and I was like, you know what? I'll just like get up, go act like I'm gonna like work out, but then I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna like sauna for 20 minutes or however long. I think I ended up doing about 20 minutes. Sauna for 20 minutes, and then take a cold like shower after that, because that was like what I was reading is like really helpful. And then I'll do my day, and then I'll do my run. So it's like not gonna, you know, zap me the same way, but I'll like get up, I'll do something that's like good for me, and I'll kind of maintain my routine, you know, without kind of working myself into the ground. And so I did that and went in the sauna and like did that whole deal, and like did the sauna, then showered, then ended with a cold shower because I was just something I was trying. And I was like, this is like I did like I was talking to a buddy. He's like, anytime I do that, you almost feel like euphoric, right? When you're like really hot and then you're really cold and then your body just like feels activated. It's good. And I was like, that's awesome. And then I like come back from the gym and sit down to have breakfast, maybe like 20, 30 minutes after the sauna. And I'm like, man, I could, I swear, I could go to bed right now. And just like I was so relaxed, but I was just so tired. Like that's how I felt. I did not feel ready to work at all. Like I could almost imagine if I could, like my gym is open later. So I was like, I could almost imagine if I didn't have anything to do in the evening, like going, doing what I just did, like coming home, eating dinner, and then going to bed. Like that would be the best feeling because I did not anticipate like how much that sauna was gonna really zap me. So then I was just kind of like dragging my butt the rest of Wednesday. Not to mention I still had to go run at the end of the day too. So my sauna experiment kind of failed. I will not be doing that. Like I'll definitely try the sauna again, but I will not be doing it first thing in the morning ever again. That was a bad idea.
So did you end with the sauna or did you take a cold shower?
No, I went into the locker room, saunaed for like 20, 25 minutes. I didn't have a, I couldn't, I knew I was in there at least 20 minutes, but the other thing I didn't think about was there was no way to tell time in the sauna, and I didn't want to bring my phone in. Um, but I did like 20, 25 minutes. Then I went to the shower, like showered normally, like get the sweat off, and then ended with like a 60 seconds of cold water. And then I got
Oh,
dressed and went home. Yeah.
I think you need an ice bath. If you had
Well,
an
I
ice
didn't
bath,
have
I think
that.
that would wake you up.
Yeah.
You
I
got to
I
talk to
didn't
your
have
gym.
that. Yeah. And like I said, I felt awake and really great. It was just like when I came down off of that, like half an hour later, I was like, oh, I feel like my body felt so relaxed. I was like, I feel like I'm melting into this chair. I could just go to sleep right now.
Yeah,
So
man.
I don't know. It's yeah. So that's kind of my routine. I don't know if it's the best thing you could do. The other thing I have definitely done is like I've stayed at the gym too long, and then you're just getting like your day started way too late, which will bite you in the butt too. So if I'm gonna do that, I gotta like get up and go do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's why
But,
I run out of time in the morning and only get about 10 minutes in because I start my day like professionally, you could say at 7:30.
mhm.
So I've got to have everything done by then. And typically by the time I do, what I want to in the morning, and I try to read in the morning and then working out, I mean it just 7:30 comes way too fast. And then you're out the
Yeah, if I
door.
had to start then, there's no way I could get all that done.
Yeah.
So
And then noontime, like I don't really do lunch hour, but you can do stuff around noon. But I find that's hard. Like in the middle of the day, if you make it to noon and you're still on your feet, I don't like to use up the rest of my energy that I still have to work out in the middle of the day and then still have a whole afternoon to work. Like I relax at noon as much as possible for about an hour, hour and a half. That way I've got
yeah,
some energy in the afternoon.
yeah, yeah. For me, it really depends too. Like right now, it's like 25 degrees outside, and the the wind's like going like 20 miles an hour. Like it's very unpleasant outside right now. At least for me. I'm sure if someone in the Western United States will listen to this and be like, man, Joe is such a wimp. But for me, it's unpleasant to be outside, right?
Yeah.
And I find when I'm like that, I'm almost better off like doing the gym, sitting down, eating like a big, like very protein rich breakfast, and then just going out to the barn and just like getting tunnel vision and just riding horses until I'm done. And then, you know, and then when you put them all away and then just come back in. But like not when it's really cold outside, I'm not into the like going out, coming in, going out, coming in. I like because if you're riding all the time, you can like stay pretty warm, you know. But it's almost like harder for me to like take a break in the middle of the day and then like warm back up and get going.
So, in light of like tunnel vision while you're riding horses, when you go out to ride a bunch of horses and you have something you need to take care of, paperwork or phone calls or some planning, something like that, do you like to go take care of that first before you ride, or do you like to ride your colts first?
So that kind of depends on the season. Like I said, right now, if I have stuff for the podcast or stuff that stuff I need to do for the business, like I'm starting to work on my taxes and stuff like that. Um, like I will do that as I'm eating breakfast and then like after I finish breakfast in an effort to like let it warm up, then let it be the warmest part of the day, and then I'll ride till like 6:30, 7 o'clock, whenever I wrap up, and that like works better for me. But then in the summer when it's hotter, then I'm kind of like switching, right? I'll like get up really early and go to the barn first and try to ride horses while it's cool, and then in the middle of the day I will take a break. So I just try to like put that stuff in my schedule like during the time I want to be inside, and then the time it's most pleasant to be outside, I like I ride horses. So, and I have the luxury to do that because I'm my own boss. You can't always do that. When I was working a day job, I had to ride them first thing in the morning no matter what. But now that I can change it up, I do because I like to try to be tough, but I also don't want to make life harder than it has to be on myself.
Yeah, I feel you. Have you ever heard David Goggins talk about this idea of your mind as a garage? And if you have all this stuff jam packed in your garage, for one, if you need something, you can't find it. It's probably buried. And then if you want to park your car in there, you can't because you have crap everywhere. So if you can get all this stuff in your garage and throw out the junk and organize things and label them and have them in the right place, and then now you even have space to come do a project or park your car in there at night, and your mind, your brain is a lot like that. And I've been trying to implement that in my life because, like, I'm a little bit like you, but then I have this flirtatious relationship with taking on more responsibilities all the time. So, like, I'm always before I ride colts, because if I get interrupted while I'm riding horses, like it really takes away. Like I'd just as soon as not even get the horse out because I don't want to just like be out there just not getting anything done. So I'm always making sure that if somebody's going to need me like halfway through, that doesn't happen. So I'll try to talk to them first and get that out of the way. And any phone calls that I think might come in that I would want to take, I'll go ahead and call them back first or let it go to voicemail when it finally comes in, but one or the other. And then same with, if I've got to give someone some direction or something, do that ahead of time. That way it's taken care of for like 2 or 3 hours out. And then I'll put in my AirPods. I won't even be listening to anything, but I'll put in AirPods. Hopefully they're not listening to this. So it looks like I'm listening to something. and I'll just ignore people. And if I have a good conscience that I've set everything up, then you're not going to get much out of me for about 2 or 3 hours. And then when I get done with that last horse, take my AirPods out. If there's people there, I'll be like, hey, how's it going? Need anything? How's it going? How's that project coming along? Call people back, eat a little bit. And then David Goggins also talks about having like a little me time. And lunchtime, I do treat that as me time. Like I'll start like, cause I, still kind of doing the carnivore thing. So if I'm going to cook something or fry some eggs, and I'll just click the TV on, and I'll just watch like a mindless YouTube video or listen to some music, just any old thing, just totally just knock all this stuff out of my mind. If I've written it down, if there's something that I don't want to push out of my mind, then I write it down first so I don't forget it. And then I put it down on a piece of paper. It's written down. I won't forget it. And then I just, for about an hour, just have like mindless me time. Have lunch, relax, try to take that, I don't know, just tension of life all the way down to nothing. And then when I'm done, then it's like I turn back on. I look at my notes, get back to it, text people or whatever I need to do to like get the ball rolling again. It's like Ben powering back up, and then I'm good to go. And that's my plan I shoot for. Doesn't always work that way, but
Yeah.
But I find it's very hard to ride horses and get something done unless you're focused. And I think I used to kind of allow myself to be a little distracted. We used to talk about that, about listening to music while you're riding, or like listening to podcasts while you're riding horses. But like now, it doesn't make any sense to do that because like I've got enough going on, and then you can't hear anything either. Like if you're on a touchy horse, you can't hear a tarp blowing by or the tractor coming up the road, or you can't hear any of this stuff. So then they might do something and you're totally unaware. It's like one of your senses is completely taken away and other senses are distracted. So it seems really dumb more and more that I think about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago, a month ago, like I stopped listening to stuff while I was riding anymore. I might listen to music or a podcast when I'm like feeding or doing chores or something. But if I'm like working with a horse, I have just like told myself like this horse, whether it's mine or someone's paying me to ride it, this horse for this time period, they deserve my undivided attention. And it's almost like a respect thing, because I wouldn't want someone trying to teach me stuff while they had like their earbud in, listen to like a sports podcast or something.
Yeah, it'd be disrespectful to you.
Yeah.
One little thing though, and you might call it a hack, I guess, but with older horses that are a little further along, sometimes I will listen to music, and I like the acoustics from the AirPods versus a speaker. I just think the speaker. So for one, I like music, and I don't like to over listen to music. So that speaker, the quality's not that great, and so like songs you like don't sound that great. So I'd rather, if I'm listening to music, have it be good. And but I'll listen to music when I ride a horse that's a little older or further along, and it kind of helps me appreciate them a little bit more. Sometimes I can be a little critical of a horse that's further along. I think they ought to be a little better. Or heck, if they're dragging their feet a little bit, it'll kind of irritate me that I can hear their feet like clopping on the ground and like little dumb stuff. And it does need to get fixed up. But it helps me kind of tune that out and just sort of dance with them, I guess. Just ride around and work on stuff, and I don't know.
Sure.
Like I kind of enjoy it with some older horses.
That makes sense.
That nothing's going to go
but
south.
You're probably doing that in the arena mainly, right?
Yeah. Oh, never outside of the arena. Like I would never ride out to do a job with AirPods in.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I could see that if you were in the arena on kind of a more broke horse, That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story that also happened. I guess it happened Monday, maybe Tuesday. I don't know. But um, about like not being distracted and stuff. So I had to run to the feed store um, first thing in the morning. Well, after the gym, like straight from the gym to the feed store. And I got back, and Kaylee's got this new warm blood that I've been working on, and so I like, in addition to what I normally get, had to get some feed for him, and it's this brand, which no free ads, so I won't say the name of the brand, but basically they have a senior and a performance, and they the bags look very very similar, and I grabbed the senior because I was like, oh, that's the bag, we've got in the tack room now, so that's what he gets, and then I get back and I'm like feeding everything, and then I like go to unload the grain while all the horses are eating, and I'm like, oh man, he's eating the performance, not the senior. Like, messed up. And I called Kaylee and I said, and she was like, oh yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's not like we really don't want to be switching him over or anything like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. So it's like, well, what am I gonna do now? Like, because I was almost out of feed for him. Like I had enough to feed him that morning, but he eats twice a day, so not in the evening. I was like, well, I'm already here. I'll go, I'll ride a few horses and then go before they close. And I like have a tendency to be like pretty hard on myself, and I was just like, oh man, I can't believe I messed that up because it's like 20 minutes away to get to this place, and all this stuff like that like it was just really irritating me. And I had a horse caught, and I had walked it like halfway to the pen to like saddle her, and then I was like, God, you know what? I need to just be a little more disciplined about this. And so I turned around, put the horse back in its stall, got in the car, drove to the feed store, returned the feed, got new feed, came back, and I like took the time to do that. And I went, still got all the horses ridden that day, and had like good, what I felt like were good rides, you know. But it's because that that nagging thing that was going to be sitting in the back of my head that I had to do all day. I just was like, I don't think I'm going to stop thinking about this until I just take care of it, and then I can be here with my horses and really focus.
Yeah.
But that's like the first time in my life I've ever made a decision like that. Like prior to a couple days ago, I would have always just like been irritated at myself, and then whoever I caught next was going to pay the price for it. I probably wasn't going to like, go whooping some butt or anything, but it was going to be a subpar ride, and I was going to be more irritable than I needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that so interesting, man? Like where we're at with this, you have a lot of opportunities to have those original thoughts for the first time that you've never had before. And you can feel it. You're like in the moment, and you're like, hey, I mean, I'm changing pretty slow, but this is cool. Like I haven't stopped and followed through with that before. I've talked about it with Joe, and I've talked about it with Bill, and I've heard it in buck clinics, and I've read it in Tom Dorrance's books, but it hasn't quite made it to the arena yet. And then when it makes it to the arena, where you're like, oh, this is that moment. And I'm not pissed off yet, so I still have time to like check myself. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. What it is it's really empowering, right? Because it's like, oh, you finally had the self-awareness to implement this.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be, that little change, and then you're like, man, if I can do that, what else can I fix up?
Yeah.
Like, that's how I look at it, and it's no different than like a horse. You teach them one thing, and then if they can learn that, they'll be more apt to learn the next thing and just build their confidence. But it comes,
and other people too. It's really fun watching
us.
it happen with other people. that are working
Yeah.
at this, and you watch them working at it, and you see stuff that they might miss a lot of times, and then you see them make a correction and get ahead of the trouble, and you see the recognition in them, and you see it all come together. Like the other day, I was talking with the guys, and I forget how we got into it, but someone asked me what I thought, and I was like, yeah, that the more I've been around this, you know, don't think I'm taking feel out of horsemanship, but it's like a big math equation, and you can't. So, and on many levels, but maybe you're working with your horse, like you can't hammer the ideas through his head, but the thing you're trying to get done, and the way you're asking him, and the way you're going about it, like there's a truth to it. You're going to stick to the way that you know to work on it. If you're confident it's the right way, then that's that's your truth, so to speak. So you're going to stick with that. You're going to keep working on that, but you can't hammer it into his head. You just keep presenting it like you're trying to teach someone what 4 + 2 equals, and he might say 5. And you say, no, let's do it again. And you just keep doing it again, and you keep setting up the parameters, and then eventually they keep coming back with the correct answer consistently. And then they learn that, and not to sound mechanical, but it was neat because I see that with a lot of other stuff now too, that it's a lot of it's just a big equation, and there's a lot of a lot of parallels and similarities. And I think a lot of times where I screw up with my horse is I abandon the journey, or I abandon the textbook. I throw the textbook out, and now it's Ben, doing UFC versus the horse. I mean, Ben versus the horse in a UFC fight, and it doesn't work out because I just abandoned the textbook. And so the more I can learn to like stick to the textbook, and then I don't have to get mad. It's not my fault. I just work for myself to teach this um this consistent pattern to this horse. And consistent pattern doesn't just mean some physical pattern like a reiner or something, but there's a consistent pattern to my behavior, my emotions, as much as I can control it anyway. Everything, the feel, all the way up to the actual physical hard things you do with your lead rope or your flag or your leg, your spur, whatever. But when you start to abandon that and let your emotions get in there, it's almost like a math teacher that would get off the rails with a big wooden, paddle and start beating people for coming up with the wrong answer, where that's not how you're going to fix it. You just got to keep helping them figure out 2 and 4 are always going to equal 6, and there's just no way around it. But the wooden paddle isn't going to get them there. But that's something that I noticed just watching, or I don't know. It was kind of one of those moments where I didn't like succeed in the moment the way that I would like to someday, but I did. Like I didn't get angry, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just not being a good teacher, so I got to approach this different." But I didn't go back for like my wooden paddle, so to speak. And it reminded me of that when you said that about being in the arena. But I don't know. I feel like that's like a whole thing itself. Just getting better at having those moments where you're learning. It's not even about the horse. You're like learning to apply what you're learning so that you're consistent. Like you want the horse to be consistent every time with like little stuff, right? Like a stop every time means a stop. But like a lot of times we're not consistent. Like every time we encounter a problem with the horse, we might have a little different answer depending on if we're having a good day, bad day, don't have enough time, have too much time, or kind of lazy, or too charitable, maybe, whatever it is. And it's like we're learning to be consistent, or we need to learn to be consistent ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like there's some days, probably what happens more often than not for you and me, because we're both kind of type A, is some days you're like you need to get this. You have to get this right now, right now. And you look for that promptness and all that stuff at the sacrificing the horse being soft and willing and like in a kind of in a good state of mind. But then you can also like it happens to me less, but it's definitely happened to me. You can just be so like, okay, I've lost my temper or whatever it is. So today it's going to be all good vibes, right? And like whatever I do, I'm not going to upset the horse. And you might not upset the horse, but you don't get anything done either, right? And I've definitely had a lot less of those days, maybe just like one or two. But yeah, like you said, you have to learn to be consistently in between there, where you're presenting yourself in a way that the horse will search and feel good about searching, but also, yeah, that's kind of it. Like they need to feel good about searching, but they need to be positive enough that they'll still search. They won't just sit there and be like, oh well, this guy, he's not actually for real, you know. So that's something I struggle with still, and I mean that's like working with horses 101, right? Is don't go too slow, don't go too fast, don't do do everything just right in perfect balance. And my biggest problem is I'll like I'll go too fast. I won't break things down enough, or I won't, like you said, abandon the textbook. I'm like, no, I'm gonna like make this happen instead of breaking down what I want to have happen into like 3 smaller things and give the horse some wins. I'm gonna throw the textbook out the window and make this happen all together right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
almost like that teacher where you're like, teacher, I don't get it. And they're like, they almost have this look like, oh, you're going to get it. And they just start scribbling on the board, and they're just doing it the way they would do it. And they just
Yeah,
figure if they just do it the way they do it enough times and fast enough and yell hard enough, you'll get it. And you're like, no, I don't get it. And they'll write it down again. See, blah, 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 bam. No, I'm not reaching that conclusion with you. I'm not there. And then you have that the overly charitable side, right? You probably had teachers like that where, yeah, they were fun. You remember them for some fun, but they never raised the bar. You don't ever remember one time where they were like, hey, Ben, you need to do better than this. Like you just never had that come from them. It was always like, hey, that's pretty good. Let's have recess. I brought treats today. It's like, that's great. You like them, they're fun, but there's no bar raising. There's no goal.
yeah,
And then that teacher that just figures if they tell you enough times the way they think, you'll just get it because maybe you'll be intimidated into it. You'll think, damn it, I better get it because this guy's getting kind of irritated. I must be dumb. I better figure it out. But your brain doesn't work like that. And yeah, like I was watching a guy work with a horse like the day before yesterday, and the horse was having a hard time, and I wasn't really like there to help him. I mean, I was just watching, but I was thinking about like how you would, like I wasn't really trying to think about how you would help him and his horse. I was just thinking about like if I was in his shoes there on the ground, and because it wasn't working out too well for him. And I was like, he's kind of running through the protocol though. So I started trying to think through the eyes of the horse, like what is it about him that wouldn't make sense to me if I was that horse? And it wasn't much. It was like a fine line between what he was doing and just sharpening it up. And like just a little bit. Like he would ask for a little too long. The horse would finally get to the right spot, and then he'd ask like 1/2 second more. And you could just see that horse wasn't getting it. He was like, no, dude, what's the deal? Like I was there, and then you did something else. So it was like a little late on the release and then a little late on the definition, And And it was amazing because I was like, that's probably me all the time, because I know I'm not on time a lot, and I know I don't like the way my horses feel a lot. So I'm constantly, like we were just saying, maybe just horsepowering up a little bit. Like, all right, you're going to get it done. But like watching him work, I I learned so much, because it was like a half a second too long before he released, and about a half a second too late uh, before he defined it. And you could just see the confusion in the horse. He wasn't quite getting it because it was blurry. And then you figure if you are a half second late, at times you probably are a half second early. Sometimes you're a whole second late, and then a whole second early. So that was really fun. It's been really fun to have, people to watch, because, we're getting ready to go to some clinics, and that'll be encouraging. Like, I'm ready to go to some clinics. I don't know if you feel that sometimes, but you learn a lot, usually in a season, over a couple weekends or something. You get aware of a lot, and then you need some time. Go spend a month or two, maybe 6 months even. You're riding a lot of horses and you're practicing, but then you start to get dry again. It's like your cup starts emptying out, and you're like ready. You're hungry for to be around people that are way handier than you, and you're hungry for some learning. But I think that it's not a full substitute by any means, but being around people who are just getting into this and practicing, there's definitely some value in that, where you can watch them work and pretend like it's you, and you get to kind of see it. Like all the new pickups have the cameras all the way around. Like, you're still the same guy driving the pickup. You're still terrible at watching your mirrors, like most of these folks that can hardly back a trailer up. But now they can back their trailer up because they have this picture of the whole thing from above. Like right there in real time, they can see all the obstacles. Now they understand how a pickup turns and how a trailer turns. Like, a lot of people don't even quite have that down, which way you turn the wheel to make the trailer go.
Oh yeah.
Which it could take them 10 years of experience, or you just have the cool camera. And I always hated on those things, but I probably shouldn't do that too much, because that does actually help folks. And like sitting on the fence watching someone else work their horse is a little bit like backing up your trailer with the overhead camera view. And you might not be a very damn good driver, but at least now you see the big picture. And next time you don't have any mirrors, you have a better understanding of how it all physically works together. And the same with watching another guy work his horse. You're not down in the battle. You're kind of up on the hill. You can kind of armchair quarterback the thing, as long as you keep your mouth shut and you just apply what you learn to yourself next time you get out there. I think that it's a cool effect.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. The technology of that stuff has always baffled me. How they like have the cameras on the sides, but then they give you an overhead view.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's a really good way to put it, because you can sit there and watch. And I mean, simultaneously, it helps watching people who are better than you, too. Like, you sit there on the fence and you're like, oh man, we talk about it. We go to clinics, we notice like little things in the people that are handier than us that they've probably been doing for a long time, but you just never noticed it until then. And then likewise, like you were saying, with someone who's maybe just getting started, you're like, a year ago, I don't think I would have noticed that they were just like that much off. But since I've kind of been through that, or I've worked enough horses now, I kind of see like where that snag is.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we got to time
Yeah.
out for just a minute because I got to take a bathroom break.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody. All right, we're back. Hey, something I wanted to get your opinion on. I was reading this article this morning. It was about horse behavior in the microbiome. I know we were talking about that last week with Sarah. And we have our own, I don't know, I'm sure we have our own opinions, which is never a safe thing. But we certainly talked about this back and forth. Is talking about, is your horse's diet and microbiome to blame for the bad behavior? And this article breaks down the research. And I was reading through it. Like there's a lot of that going on too with humans. You know, you hear a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists talking lately about like gut health and just overall health and how that pertains to your mental health. And like, so some people have everything going on in life, then they have a terrible diet, or they have something wrong uh, physically. But then you have the vice versa too. How much, where people have their physical body all set up, they're in great shape, digestion's well, but then their mind isn't, quite right because of, maybe lack of purpose or lack of leadership, ownership, etc. You can go on and on about all that. Um, like with your business so far and horses coming in, like have you had cases like that where you've thought about treating horses? Or because think of it this way, I guess, is we already, well, we're learning to through horsemanship treat these horses on the mental side. So have you had horses so far that you've like considered um going beyond that because you felt like there was more? There was actually a health or like microbiome imbalance, gut problem, or ulcer, something like that.
Yeah. Um, I mean, the biggest one for me is I've definitely had some people say, like, had some people send me horses, and I've told them like, hey, you gotta get a dental done on this horse. You gotta get their teeth floated, um, because for whatever reason they had like a wolf tooth or whatever, um, and like it was just you could look in the horse's mouth and kind of see like, man, that would irritate me, you know. So I've done that a time or two, and like that was like almost overnight. Like a horse gets way softer, right? Because they're not irritated. Um, Besides that, there like I've had horses that I'm like, ah, if this were my horse, I would probably maybe look into treating it for ulcers. Especially like I had one that was she was always kind of crabby, right? But it got especially crabby when you were uh, you were like tacking her up and doing the cinches. And anytime you like get near her stomach, you know, like you'd go to like touch your hand on her stomach to cinch her up. And I'm like, I've seen cinchy horses, and it just seemed like she had something extra to that, if that makes sense. Like she'd like you'd reach for the back cinch, and she'd maybe be tempted to like kick out her belly or something. And and so she started out crabby all the time, and then she was here for 2 months, and then by the end, she kind of like everything was like her attitude had kind of changed for the most part, except for right then she'd still act irritated when would get around her stomach. And maybe it was something that I didn't help her enough in that area, and there was something different I could have done. But just in the back of my mind, I had the thought like, maybe there's something that just doesn't feel good in there, and she doesn't like me like reaching for it. So
Oh,
I've had the thought, but then it kind of ties into like what and I'll bring this up in a little bit, but like I don't want to I want to help people as much as I can, but I don't want to be telling them like you got to do this and you got to do that. Like I'm not a vet, right? You know, so part of me is like maybe I should just stay in my wheelhouse and control what I can control. Even if at least with other people's horses. If it was my horse and they were acting like that, then yeah, I'd maybe just go ahead and experiment and be like, okay, we're gonna try an ulcer treatment and see if things get better. But I don't know if I'd have enough confidence to tell someone else that I think they should do that with their horse.
yeah. So less confidence to tell them that than you would saying, "Hey, you know, your groundwork is terrible. So the fact you're complaining about not getting this done riding, um, we can help you. We're gonna get this thing operating on the ground. We're gonna rope its feet. We're gonna do this and that, and
Hmm. Yeah,
and
exactly.
confident you're gonna see some results.
Like I could feel confident in being like, hey, just so you know, your horse like it pushes on you constantly, and I'm gonna work on that with the horse, and I'm gonna show you how to fix that up so that doesn't happen anymore. I feel
Yeah,
very confident in that, right? Because that's like one kind of how I see my role, and two, something that at this point I know enough about. Like you can see it when it's happening, you know how to fix it, you have no qualms about speaking to it towards a person, right?
yeah,
Um, but then when you get to the veterinary side, you're kind of going off of anecdotal evidence at best, right? Because I have like treated like Betty, my off track mare. We treated her for ulcers, but like what racehorse doesn't have ulcers? It was almost like a given, right? And she definitely felt a lot better after she got treated. She didn't seem near as irritated when you were grooming her and stuff like that. Like because her stomach probably felt better.
what was the amount of time that it took for that to turn over?
The treatment is like either like 21 or 28 days, something like that. And then you probably saw like real effects in like 5 weeks or something.
Hmm.
It was a couple years ago now, but I do remember it like it it changed her demeanor quite a bit. I mean, she's still a high strung off track thoroughbred, but I don't think she physically like was uncomfortable, right? She'd still be touchy and spooky, but she wouldn't like pin her ears when you go to touch her and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
you know what I mean? There's almost like a difference between a pain response and a spooking response.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, yeah, because I've been giving it some thought, and I think that, yeah, for sure, the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater on both sides of that issue. It seems, and like I was equating it to humans. Like we need both.
Mhm.
You need mental health and physical health. But what's interesting with humans, and because we're responsible for ourselves, a lot of times physical health follows mental health, or like mental health has to, like you have to get yourself up off the couch first, and have some discipline to have good health, and then they kind of come together. And then as you feel better, then you have more energy, you think straighter, but then you order your life better so that you can also have better health, and they kind of go hand in hand. And then with a horse, that's a lot of their health, and then the more that you control them, like if you have a horse in for training, a lot of his physical and mental health is really your responsibility at that point. And so
Yeah.
then I think they are both pretty equal. And I think that, yeah, definitely the baby can get thrown out with the bathwater, and I want to be careful to make sure that I do pay attention to that stuff, and be mindful of a horse that might feel kind of off. But for sure, I think it can be difficult because you'll see a horse that has a problem, or is refusing to do something, and like right off the bat throwing out some medical solution like you're a little bit like Nostradamus at that point. Like just kind of you can just start throwing some stuff at it, and then something will work or something will seem better. Well, and also if you're working with that horse, he is probably going to be getting better. So you throw out these antidotes, and then as you're working with him, he is getting better, and then you can be like, oh well, that helped him out. So it's harder to know exactly what helped him, but it's still important. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's still pretty important. And I have a horse. Like I have a horse right now that just came in. I think it came from some kill pen somewhere. Another one of those deals. Kind of a goofy horse, but hey, he's a good old horse. And Yeah, he's a little underweight, little scrawny looking, and he's hard to catch. And I spent the first 4 days just petting him in the pasture if I could get up to him and bringing him a little feed. And then this morning is the first day I worked with him, and I just brought him down, fed him, tied up for about an hour, brushed him for a while, and then worked with him. But he's real funny, real picky about his whole body. And if any horse here was going to have worms or look kind of rough, it's probably him. And the folks that got him, I mean, they've been taking really good care of him, but they've only had him a couple weeks, and they sent him to me right away. So it's another kind of rehab deal. And so I'm thinking about, treating him, but not at all slacking off of my horsemanship. And I feel like, I just want to be real true to that, because that's like that same balance in our lives, right? You could eat as healthy as you want. It's funny, like lately, all the guys here, they're all going to do the carnivore diet this month with me. So it'll be a big deal. And, but you could do that, right? You and your buddies, you could do the carnivore diet or whatever diet you want, eat really well, feel really good about yourself. But you could let a bunch of other stuff go in your life. And then it's like, so what? You could be a healthy jerk. So I'm going to treat him somewhat, and kind of use that as a test, see how that goes, and not slack off my horsemanship at all. And try not to throw either the baby or the bathwater out. And because, I mean, what would be the downside, right?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? Like, what is the downside to treating a horse?
I mean, honestly,
there is one.
the financial cost, like that's kind of it, like maybe treating, like, last week, Sarah talked about kind of a non-traditional way to treat ulcers, but, most of the time treating ulcers can be $300, $400, $500 for like cheap fixes, so the other thing too, though, especially like with a horse like that, like you described, is if he's looking kind of rough, he might you'll know if something changed if he's like physically looking better, like if his coat starts changing, and like you've been around enough horses, just kind of like his general. I know when we work with them every day, like their expression changes, right? You take a crabby horse, have them in for 90 days, and then horse feels a lot better about themselves, right? But I don't know. I feel like I can definitely, you go somewhere where there's a lot of horses, and you'd be like, wow, that person, regardless of their horsemanship, that person takes really good care of that horse. And you can tell just kind of by their coat and their posturing and stuff. And then, they might take it out of the stall and it's like constantly running them over. But I feel like there are some physical signs to, oh, well, he kind of needed that. Similar to if someone changes their diet, if you're around them every day, you can like tell, like, oh, you must change something because you're looking different. You're looking better. You might be a good looking like jerk still, but but you're looking better. So you did make some positive change in your life.
Yeah. And that's why I want to use him as like an experiment to treat, because if there was ever a horse I've had in a while that would behave kind of crabby and it be coming from a physical condition, it would be him. And but at the same time, like I said, not throw out the horsemanship at all, because I feel like that's really important not to lose that, because back to having a healthy balance between physical health and mental health. Physical health, you got to have some discipline and a regimen, and you got to make sure you're eating the right things, and you're checking your body to make sure it's healthy. And if it's not, you're taking care of that. But as far as mental health, like that requires some discipline, not just, all this, like, let the horse find it. Let the horse find it. If you're freaking disciplined and you offer the same thing every time. And that was something else I was thinking about while I was watching that guy work the other day. Because I was like, let the horse find it. Like, Tom Dorrance said, Ray Hunt, Buck, everyone, let them find it. But but they won't find anything if you aren't disciplined. Don't discipline the horse. Don't be a Nazi, but you be disciplined so that the horse can find it. And so I thought, wow. So like if I'm gonna like with that horse, he does look pretty rough, and he's gonna be interesting to work with. So yeah, I'm gonna make sure he's healthy and do my best, and I might even try some of what Sarah was talking about with the mustard stuff or whatever. But at the same time, be disciplined with my horsemanship and just kind of see how that all goes, but not throw out the baby with the bathwater on either side of that. So
Yeah.
see how it goes. I'll let you
Yeah.
know.
No, it'd be good. Like I said, I've got one I've been thinking about trying it on. Just haven't pulled the trigger. I haven't gone to the grocery store.
Yeah,
But
I drove past it this morning, but I would have been late if I stopped in.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, one way to look at it is like if I tie a lot of things back to sports. So if you're someone's coach now, right? And you're, say for example, you're like now you're this horse's coach. You need to be invested in them being as healthy as possible all the way around, right? Not just, if we're talking about sports, like not are they doing the right workouts and are they, practicing their free throws and stuff like that. Um, it's like, oh no, you need to be eating the right things. You need to be like taking care of yourself, or in this case, like you need the care from me. Um, and it's, gosh, it wouldn't, if it worked out like this and it wouldn't hurt, people would be like, I sent that horse to Ben and the horse got a lot better. And he was really relaxed and, a little handy when he got back, and that was good. But gosh, he like, you know, physically he transformed too. He looked a lot different. Like his coat was brighter and he put on some weight and stuff. Like that's a really good thing to have someone say about you as someone who rides horses for the public is, oh yeah, the horse came back and behavior was a lot better and like things changed, but also the horse went there, or the horse came back looking better than when I left.
Yeah.
So if you can
Yeah.
do things like that, like why wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause
Yeah,
more
you
and
just
more
don't
I
want
try
to
to,
be like empty one without the other, I guess. You wouldn't want to
yeah,
just send home a healthy horse, like you said, like a healthy jerk,
yeah,
or send
exactly,
home like you send home a bones and skin bridle horse.
yeah,
Neither one's a good thing.
yeah, exactly. Um, and more and more I try to treat it like I I don't think I've ever like mistreated horses or like underfed horses or anything like that. But just go the extra mile. Like man, these horses I've got here, plus the ones that are mine and I'm riding, like take pride in your string. You know, like if someone rocks up, um, and even if they're not even a potential client or anything, because it's not about like your reputation like that, but it's like, oh yeah, these are, I don't know, these are like the 7 horses I've got in work right now, and you've got them all tied up, and someone's like, man, like that's a good looking set of horses, and like no matter what people send you, just do your best to be like, all right, these horses, they're gonna be broke, they're gonna look good, and I'm gonna do everything in my power for as long as they're here with me to make them nice horses, and that's gonna be a point of personal pride for me. And so I try to reinforce that all the time because again, I've never like mistreated anything or done anything like that. But you can probably agree. Sometimes it's easy just to like, well, I'm gonna feed them and ride them and like do my job. Just like any other job, you can do it or you can do it with like every fiber of your being. And either way, the job might get done, but it's just a matter of quality. And I want to be someone who does it with every fiber of my being to have that quality.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of embarrassing when you have a horse that doesn't look good. And even if you have a good conscience about it, you feel like you have to, explain that to people sometimes. Like, oh, well,
Yeah.
he's new or he doesn't keep weight on very well. And
Yeah.
so there's a very proud feeling that comes from having a good looking, bunch of horses
Mm-hmm.
that you're feeding well. And yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself. That cuts out half the talk about, when clients ask you what you feed and what your feeding regimen is. If you
Yeah.
have a bunch of good looking horses out there, like you don't even have to talk about that. You're like, well, I feed
Yeah.
that, but see all those horses, that's what I've been doing. And I keep them looking like that. And then a lot of people are like, oh, well, good deal. Just call
Yeah.
me if you need something.
Yeah. When the horses, and like they come and like the horses you have in the pen look better than the horse, like the horse that they're about to send you, right? In terms of
Yeah.
like how they're groomed and how much weight they have on and stuff. Like that's like you said, that's almost invaluable because they see that and they're like, oh well, gosh, like if I send my horse here, they might be the run of the litter. So then you're not worried about that. Um, from a client perspective, you're like, oh, the horses are going to be well taken care of, and that's something I've been working on quite a bit. Like I said, we like recently cleaned out our old barn, and I've got kind of more of a stall system now, and just lets me kind of control everyone's diet a little more, and that's been really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the mark of excellence extends beyond just how you're working with them, but
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
to every even keeping appointments. Like when you tell someone what day they should come out, like writing that down, really having that
mm-hmm.
in your memory. And I
Mm-hmm.
find more and more that's important to me, to like really pay
Yeah,
attention when the clients are talking, remember what they talked about, what they want to do with their horse. Like in the past, I've been kind of a little lax about that. Just I just thought, well, I'll just get to riding it. It'll all be okay. But now, taking more time to hear what they want to do, where they're going, remember their name. So that way when you talk to them in the future, like you act like you talk you act like you actually remember something that they said rather
yeah,
than
yeah,
just I don't know, maybe that seems kind of dumb to most people, but I think it's easy sometimes to feel like, well, I know the ultimate horsemanship, so I'm going to help your horse. So I know you want to do this, that, or the other, but who cares? I'm gonna line this thing out for you, be the best horse you ever rode. When really, it means a lot to the clients to feel like you kind of care about them and their little journey and their horse and their well-being, and you remember what day they were going to come see it on, and you marked out if you said you were going to take an hour to spend with them, you spend an hour with them. You're there on time. You're not messing with another horse when they show up and say, oh yeah, I'll be ready in 30 minutes. No, you're like ready and waiting when they get there. um,
yeah,
I think I mean for sure that they feel like you're treating them respectfully with value,
yeah,
not just their
yeah.
horse.
So this, before we wrap up, this gets into the last thing I wanted to talk about because I've been coming across this a little bit more lately, like balancing the line between, like, for example, do you ever get people asking you uh, if they should buy a horse, right? Like, hey, what do you think of this horse for me, or something like that?
Yeah.
Because I've gotten like, hey, how would you feel if I like bought this horse and then I'm gonna send it to you, you know? And but what do you think? I sometimes I struggle with that quite a bit, or maybe someone's got a horse that like doesn't have, that isn't just the right match for them, you know. because maybe it's just where they are in their horsemanship journey. Like, there's a million reasons. Like, but in the beginning, I really struggled. Like, I didn't want to tell anyone like you shouldn't be doing that, or don't buy that horse. Like, I didn't want to kind of define what other people's relationships with horses should be, right? Because maybe someone wants something out of horses that's different than what I want, and I don't think everyone should necessarily have to want exactly what I want. But at the same time, there are situations like, I had a person call me, and they want to send me a Mustang, and I was like, okay, great, and like we got it set up, and then he called me back, we talked some more, and it just became more and more prevalent that maybe he's not the most educated on horses and stuff, and he hasn't even bought this horse yet. And then he was like, well, how big do you think a horse I'd need? And I was like, well, how big are you? He's like, I'm like 5'11", like 208 pounds. I was like, okay. And I said, well, how big is this horse you're looking to get? And he said, well, it's 2.5 right now. It's about 13 hands. And then he was like, what do you think of that? And I told him, I was like, I don't know, man. I mean, you're a little on the taller side. That might be a little short. I think that would be a little short. And and then he was like, oh, well, I already put money down on this horse and da da da. And I was like, I'm not sure. Like, he's like, so is that a no go? And I mean, if it were like a family member or something, right? I would be like, hey, go get your money back. Don't buy that horse, right? But then I don't know, like, I don't know what to tell that guy. I'm not confident enough in myself, and maybe I should be. I'm not confident enough in myself to tell him, like, look, man, if you're green, maybe don't get a Mustang, and if you're dead set on a Mustang, maybe get a bigger Mustang, and no matter what you do, it sounds like you're green enough that, like, at least come and bring me a horse and let me help you to the best of my ability, if that's what you really want to do. So it's one of these things where I kind of tote that line of, I don't want to like impose what I want to do on everybody else by any means. Because, if someone says, oh, well, I want to buy a 16 3-hand warm blood and go jump the meter 20, like, what do you think about that? I mean, that's not what I want to do, but if you want to go do it, like, I wouldn't buy a warm blood because the things I want to do, the 16-3 warm blood probably isn't kind of in my wheelhouse. But then you get on the other side of the spectrum where someone's going to get a horse that's like half feral and too small for them. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot, and I'd be curious to hear your perspective on kind of what advice you give people, or when you hold your tongue or something like that.
Well, I definitely have thoughts on that. And it varies a little bit. So if it's a client or a prospective client, whether they're doing the deal, like you said, buying a horse and they're working out, sending it to you afterwards, or they already have the horse, they've just bought it, they haven't invested a lot of money into it yet, and they want you to train it, I think you should definitely be honest with them, and I think you should do it sooner than later, because you can have a tendency, like the Mustang scenario. You don't really know the client that well. You don't really know the horse that well. And then it comes to you in the first couple of weeks, you're like, yeah, this thing's kind of zingy, but you don't say anything. And then you work with it for a month. And then after you've already been paid for a month, then you kind of tell them, hey, this horse, I don't know if this is a great horse for you. Now, if you really couldn't tell at the beginning of the month, that's fine. Well, tell them at the end of the month at least. Don't go into a second month and wait so that you can confirm your own evaluation before you talk to them. But if you had some off feelings right off the bat, I think it's best to tell them then. That way, for one, you save yourself a headache, because money in the bank doesn't mean anything if you have a headache about it and the client, could get hurt and then you're the guy that trained the horse. And also, it's just good business. Then they feel more secure with you. And maybe they sell that horse and they go find a better one and they bring that horse to you. So you didn't lose any business and you gained a friend and a good reputation. Or they don't. Maybe they think you're a dumbass and they don't bring you the horse. But 9 times out of 10, probably more than 9 times out of 10, if you're doing a good job working with horses and someone gets recommended, they bring you a horse and you say, hey, this really is not a good horse for you, they're going to probably trust you, because it's not going to help you to tell them that. You're helping them. So that would be my deal with clients. And then other people, you know that saying, free advice isn't worth a hill of beans. So I wouldn't say anything unless they asked me. And then, yeah, I would just consider a few possibilities. I did have a lady contact me recently, and it was in regards to a horse that I sold quite a while ago. And turns out the horse is doing good, but he was up for sale, and a lady was looking at buying him. And she found my contact and called me about it. And even if he's the most gentle horse on earth these days and doing great, asking the lady about herself, her age, size, horse experience, what she's wanting to do with it, it was really easy to say, ma'am, this is not a good horse for you. Just period. Because I know that horse. He could be very gentle right now, but he's a smart horse. And if I just had a slightly bad feeling about that. And so I had confidence just saying, ma'am, that is not a good horse for you. And it's kind of saving me too, because that is a horse I sold, even if it is 2 or 3 people back. If he goes and bucks someone off and kills them. And I've got a few stories now, like in my mind, and I won't tell them on here, but I know some people that had horses that I liked that were in training with me, and they didn't blame me for it, but they were horses I liked. And maybe I would have told some people in the past, hey, he'll be a good horse. He just needs some work and he'll be fine. But they really had some screws loose. And yeah, maybe they would have been fine with a couple of decent hands. But, in the scenario they were in, they ended up getting into a wreck. And I don't think that would have happened with other people, but it's totally not a hit on those particular folks. But that just proved to me, like, hey, anything can happen. And so unless it's a really dead broke, solid horse that's like an insurance policy, there's a certain class of people that want to buy a horse that shouldn't really buy anything but an insurance policy type of horse. Now, maybe they won't actually do that. Maybe they can't find one. But if they're going to ask me about a horse and that horse doesn't fit that absolute insurance policy, just dead broke old gelding, I would, if they asked me, I'd say, yeah, I don't think that's the right horse for you. Now, on the flip side of that, recently, I had a nice colt come through here. He was green. He was green enough. I wouldn't have wanted to just put a bunch of people on him, but he was so nice that I had a lot of people inquiring about him, and I was standing up for him. If they were like, hey, I'm looking for a nice horse to buy, I was telling them, I was saying, hey, this is a nice horse. He needs more time. He's very green. If you were to buy him, you ought to send him back for 30 to 60 days, maybe 90 days, depending on how experienced you are. Or if you are a horseman or you are an aspiring horseman, and you're taking a lot of lessons, and you might be all right if you have some help. But this is a good opportunity if you can take advantage of it. And which was kind of weird. I've never had like that green of a horse that I was telling people that they ought to buy him. But he was nice. And the way I thought of it was, how many people have you ever met that wanted to get a new horse and maybe you talk to them about buying a colt and you starting it for them? And that's how I saw it. But I was real clear about that up front. Like, hey, this is a great opportunity to buy a horse that is going to be a babysitter someday. Disclaimer, you need to either send them back to me or send them to somebody if you don't have the wherewithal or the help. But it's a good deal if you're willing to take that on. So I think it depends, but I typically do kind of struggle with telling people kind of how it is, being straight up with them till it's a little too late. So not to say I wouldn't tell them, but sometimes I wait too long. And with the horses, I'm trying to get better at telling them right up front so that I don't let it fester and then telling them later on after too many things have transpired and it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I probably have the same exact problem as just waiting until it's too late, you know. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe that's the the kind of the optimistic side of me. It's like, well, you know, get along, or oh, like he'll really let down here soon, or something. And yeah, like you said, like there's a bunch of horses out there that if you got them around someone who was, you know, a little handy, they'd be fine and totally good. But there's a lot of horse buyers out there, or you know, clients who have just bought a horse or something that like you said, they need like an insurance policy type of horse.
Yeah.
And but that's
Hey, and that's
hard
not to say you
avoid.
shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, that's not to say you shouldn't have a charitable view either. And maybe they will settle down. But I think telling them up front, if you even have an off feeling about it, telling them right up front kind of weeds out the unbelievers. And then
Yeah,
if there is somebody who's still dead set on doing it, I mean, I'm not going to tell them what to do with their money or their time, unless I
yeah,
don't want to mess with it. But
yeah.
you know, then I'll
Well,
mess
because
with it for them, and then it's on
here's
them.
the thing: the last thing you want to do is become the horse trainer who's just going around telling everybody like, "Oh no, that horse won't work out for you,"
Yeah,
or whatever. You know, like you don't want to be like, "Oh well, you take this horse to Joe and he's just going to tell you need a different horse. He's not even going to try to work with your horse," which I don't think anyone thinks that. But there there are guys like that out there, guys and girls like that out there, where
yep,
maybe things don't go well and it's like, well, here's the thing. This horse just isn't the right fit for you, when it's actually maybe the person, the trainer who's lacking.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes the trainer is also a little bit cocky, so you kind of look down on the general public, so to speak, as being less than you. So you're
Exactly.
constantly telling other people, "Oh, I don't think you can handle this horse." But again, that
Yeah.
that I guess would weed out a trainer in itself too, because then, well, you don't have any business. So if you were feeding yourself riding horses for folks, and you tell everyone their horse isn't any good for them, or basically you're telling folks they're not any good for their horse at that point, and well, you're
Right.
probably going to run out of business anyhow at that point.
Yeah. Because in my heart of hearts, the idealist in me wants everyone to be handy and get along really well with their horse. But the reality is, one, not everyone pursues that, and two, you've got to keep people safe.
Yeah,
So it's just one of those things. Like if everyone was just super handy and anyone could just ride any horse, that would be amazing. But that's not reality. So then you have to kind of start, like you said, kind of communicating that with people, like trying, you know, kind of trusting your instincts on certain horses, things like that.
yeah. And I think that's where you, in my mind, I don't see any way you can ever really commercialize um, training horses for folks to an extent where it's no longer personal between the person doing the work, riding the horse, and the client. Because you have to have some nuance with each person that comes in, and you can feel them out a little bit. I mean, I like to talk to people when they come, and in any colt or any horse that's a little troubled, I'd say to them, I kind of run through what I'm going to do, you know, give them a little timeline. And then I say, hey, and right there in that round corral, you know, before that horse leaves here, you know, you'll be riding with me. And, you know, the first time you ride him, I'm going to put you in there and we're going to take the halter off him and I'm going to flag you around. And I just kind of talk him through what I'm going to do with him. during one of their visits. And if the person gets white knuckled and, blabbering in the mouth and says, I don't know about it. I mean, that would be a red flag. But if they're like pretty game, like, hell yeah, I'll do that. So there's little tells, with each person. And when you get to know them when they come, you can start sizing somebody up, and you can tell if maybe they bit off a little more than they can chew, but they also have what it takes to, buck up. And after a few months and hanging around some, and maybe you recommend a few lessons with somebody, or if you do lessons, and you'll help them out. Or you might get the feeling where you hear them out and you go, yeah, no, this horse really isn't the one for you. And and frankly, it'll probably come along every now and then in your career too. There's going to be people that when you tell them this horse isn't for them, you're sort of telling them, this could be controversial, but you might be telling them horses aren't for them. And I just think all that stuff is rare, where you're turning people down. At least right now it is. For the most part, people have nice horses, pretty gentle horses they bring you. But I think it's rare. But when it happens and you need to make that call, you're looking out for your fellow human over looking out for the horse. And you're really looking out for both in the long run. But whether you care about people or not, you certainly are saving your own rear end. But I do care about people, and I think, you got to keep it personal. You got to meet each one of your clients. You got to establish some relationship with them. And as the trainer, you have to take up some confidence and be the leader when they show up, and ask them what they're going to do with their horse and how long they've been riding, and all that. Like you're doing a bit of a consult with your new client. You got to get to know them so that you can serve them properly and without being arrogant. You're a servant. You serve your client. And this whole idea, I think you get some trainers that see it as their client works for them. And, I can fire my clients if I want to. Yeah, I mean, that's great if you want to feel that way. If you're so devoid of self-respect that you need to think about how easily you can fire your clients, you might have other things you need to work on. But I think when you have your priorities straight, you serve your clients. And part of that is getting to know them, their abilities, their interests, what they're doing with the horse. You get to know their horse, and then you can make a pretty fair assessment and either help them or be honest with them as soon as possible.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Totally agree. So, and it's hard. It's hard being honest with them, but like you said, it's the right thing to do. Right thing to do for them. Right thing to do for you and your inner peace. So, what you got to do.
Yeah. Hey, you think we ought to give this episode a name since we don't have a guest? Did we say anything catchy that we can put like in the title? Something clickbaity,
Yeah.
Like back when we did Dylan Palm, what Dylan Palm has against Garth Brooks.
Yeah.
Didn't work out, I don't think. Although that was purely coincidental. We weren't doing clickbait, but we do clickbait now. I mean, we need followers and viewers and stuff. Yeah. It's a tough business.
Well, yeah. So anyone who's still listening, like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram to find out when our episodes launch, and find out when we'll have merch available, because Ben and I have been dragging our feet on that, but we're going to get merch up and running this spring. So follow us on all our social media platforms.
Yeah. There's no telling where this thing will go, but it is called On the Move, so that implies we're going somewhere. So hopefully it's a bright future. We'll see.
Yeah. So, what is this, episode 33?
33. Yep.
Cool.
Well, yeah, hopefully we still have a few listeners, but if they're there, thank you guys. We sure appreciate it. It's we can't say that you make it possible for us to do what we do, because actually we make it possible for what we do, but you could someday when we have merch. So stay tuned.
Exactly. Take care, everyone.